What's up, marketers, and welcome to another episode of the Growth Colony podcast. I'm Liza from X-Growth to tell you that each episode we bring in B2B leaders to chat about how you can achieve those everyday wins in the marketing world. Whether you're new to the B2B game, working at a leadership level, or even just showing some interest, we know you'll love the episode. So grab a drink, get comfy, and enjoy the show.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Growth Colony. I'm Vinnie, and today we're talking to Fern Canning, an accomplished and global marketing leader, ex-Deloitte, ex-Edelman, ex-Omnicom, and ex-DDB, and now founder and independent consultant of Kiner. We're going to be picking Fern's brains on her thoughts about marketing in today's world, both from a company and an individual perspective. We're going to delve a little bit into employee advocacy and executive personal branding, two very favorite topics of mine, as well as the differences broadly between B2C and B2B and what we can take from both. Fern, good to have you.
Thanks, Vinnie. How are you doing?
All right. How was that intro?
Fantastic. Lovely. Thank you. No pressure.
So lots to sort of cover today. Interested in hearing a little bit about what you're up to. Your background is incredible. Lots of items ticked off there. Lots of accolades along the way. Something that you and I originally spoke about when we first met, and something that you almost seem to stand for, have a reputation in, is this P2P communications and the personal side of brand building. You know, our audience is largely B2B marketing and a little bit of B2B sales. Some B2C marketers are kicking around in here. But tell us more about P2P communications. What does it stand for? What does it mean for anyone that's never heard the term before? And the personal side of brand building.
Yeah, right. So, look, I think I'm going to try and do this without being sweary, but I think there's
swear all you want.
Okay, brilliant. There's been a really big obsession over the years, and it just didn't shift, as far as I'm concerned, enough or fast enough in B2C, B2B. Right? And I think that, and I'll get into this quite a bit, but I do think that when we think B2B, we let ourselves down hugely. And so let me unpack what I mean by that. So P2P for me is people to people. So people to people or person to person communications. And what I mean by that is it's about remembering that no matter who you want to reach, no matter who you're trying to impact with marketing or any efforts, quite frankly, they're human beings. And I just think we get so caught up in corporatees that we miss that vital truth. So what I'm not saying, and I think it's a really important distinction, is I don't think we should personify our company. I think that's a bit of a waste of time when you give a company a personality and you're the hero or you're whatever. But I do think we need to remember that our companies, they're not faceless buildings. They're not, websites and services and products. They are organizations with a purpose, with reasons, with values, usually with a founder, or at least someone at the top of that pointy triangle. And a bunch of people are really passionate about what the company does. And so when you think about how you're positioning your company, you've got to bring that to life in everything you do through marketing. And it has to be inherent in every single thing you do, in every single way your stakeholders or audiences interact with you. Even in that B2B sphere, if you think about your target audience or your stakeholders, you've got to remember that you're not targeting a company name or a faceless corporate box. So within that company, you've got to know, well, who is your buyer? Who's buying your products, your services in that B2B environment? It might be a buying committee, but you've got to know their motivations, their needs, their preferences, where to reach them, how to reach them, just in the same way we would do in a B2C world, right? When we become customer obsessed, you've got to become client obsessed in a B2B world. And you've got to remember that those people you're trying to reach and impact are human beings. I see it in B2B marketing strategies that it's oftentimes a client list or an organization list or job title list without any real insight into who that person, who that buyer, who that committee is, who their sources of influence and truth are. And I think that's a really important point. And so that's what I mean when I talk about P2P. It's that humanity coming through. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to know what P2P stands for, and when in the context of B2B, talking about P2P, right? Essentially, what you're saying is that when there is another person at the other end of the buying committee, or a number of people at the end of the buying committee, the key word there is people or person, not
Yeah.
another business.
That's right.
But what's even more key, what you're saying is that because there is a person at the end, we too have to be people when approaching them from a marketing and a sales perspective. And so there was a couple of things in there in your opening gambit around, I couldn't quite get. Do you believe that a business, a brand, needs to have investment into that brand and have a personality, or do you think that there needs to be more emphasis on the individuals within said organization that is marketing and selling in order to have a better result at the end of it? Because in fact, it's not a business with a personality selling to another business with a personality. It is people within a business selling and marketing to other people within a business. So I just want to get that distinction, because I think I heard what you said, but I just wanted to get that distinction from you.
It's a nice complex spider web, isn't it? So
It is. It's lovely.
yeah. So everything you said is thereabouts correct. The only bit I would probably challenge is thinking of a company as a personality. So I do believe in brand building at a company level. I strongly believe and advocate for organizations and companies having very robust positioning, values, purpose in terms of who they are and what they're doing. I'm not talking about, sustainability as a purpose. I think that's really critical. I also think that the people within the business are fundamental, because, as you say, it's people marketing to people, but the people within the business are the face of the business in a B2B environment. That's really the front line of your advertising, your marketing, your communications, are the people behind that organization. And so they have to understand and believe in the company's positioning. They have to know about the role that they play within their company and their part in that. They have to advocate for the organization in a very genuine way, because that is where you really find the people are the brand. But what I want to make that distinction. I don't think that a company should have a personality or a persona. I think that's really important.
Company should have a brand, but not a personality and a persona.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So that's where I was getting stuck with that opening bit. So that's really something that's quite interesting. So let's delve a little bit into that. So from a B2C perspective versus B2B, I have this conversation quite often myself. From a B2C perspective versus B2B, you generally will have salespeople. More often than not, you will have people in a sales environment that are required to either pick up the phone, have meetings, go out and see clients, customers, prospects, what have you. Part of that decision-making process in a B2B space. From a B2C perspective, less likely, especially if you're selling socks or, something e-commerce on a website. Ultimately, your website is the key salesperson, and the advertising and the marketing to drive traffic to that e-commerce site does the job, because ultimately that purchasing decision doesn't require too much thought. Oh, I need socks. I'm going to buy some socks. No salesperson for me. Thank you very much. So in the B2C environment, and that's a really, really basic example, but in the B2C environment, would you argue then, based on what you've just said, would you argue that B2C brands probably need to spend a little bit more time, because there isn't that salesperson around or readily available, to invest in the brand itself and give the brand indeed a personality? What would you say to that from a B2C versus B2B perspective?
I don't think so, to be honest with you. I think, again, I just think we get extremely caught up, and there are more commonalities between the two than there are differences, because regardless of whether you're selling direct to a consumer, and I hope your sock drawer is full, Vinnie, or whether you are a salesperson going in and having that conversation at a B2B level, the organization behind, whether it's B2B or B2C, that organization, that brand, it's still a brand, will have distinctive purpose, values, positioning, and what they stand for. So in either case, I think the brand building has to work just as hard for both. I think that the distinction is the channel. So I would see your B2B sales people, if you like, they're a channel to reach the target audience, and they're a really, really important channel. And so that's why, we're going to talk about it and get into it. That's why employee advocacy is so vital, because they're your walking billboard. They're your out of home, they're your website, they're your call center, they're your everything.
They're your word of mouth.
That's the distinction. That's right. Those barbecue conversations, don't stay at the barbecue. Nothing's a secret anymore in terms of an organization.
100%. Okay. So instead then, what we're saying is that rather than a personality or focusing on building a personality for or a persona for the brand itself, what you're saying is that the purpose from the stance of the company, the collective, ultimately makes up the vision and therefore the personality, if there is one at all.
Yeah, I think I agree. I would kind of term it the positioning of an organization versus a personality, but
positioning. For which your individual employees would do well to get behind.
Yeah.
In order for that positioning to come through, both from a branding and an employee advocacy perspective.
Absolutely. And I think, there's a really big emphasis or responsibility from leadership, so that it doesn't feel like employees are getting behind it, but you're bringing them on the journey. They feel they're a part of it. They feel like they're part of that one team approach, and they understand it. It can fall off a cliff when you launch a new company vision, or you bring people in and you're a startup, and then as you grow you bring new people in, and it happens at onboarding, and you express the company vision and what you stand for, and then after onboarding, employees don't hear it anymore. It's become wallpaper as the values on their laptop. And that's really important, is to keep involving the employees, keep helping them understand what it is, but also treat them in that way. And I see a lot of organizations that say they stand for one thing, but perhaps they don't follow through in their treatment of their employees. And it's not just employees, it's every single person or business that company does business with. That can be suppliers, vendors, different stakeholders, as well as their staff. And, the way that you behave as an organization is absolutely critical, because that is your brand. Your brand is exactly how you express yourself in every single interaction.
Well, a word that comes to mind there is reputation.
Yeah.
Would you agree that reputation and brand in this instance mean something similar, if not the same thing?
100%. I would add the word trust, but it's my Edelman background, talking. But I do think that reputation and trust are really critical, and building that reputation where people feel confident in your brand's integrity, in their reliability, in how your message reaches them, and the fact that you do what you say is really important. And again, coming back to, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it, employee advocacy, people trust other people more than they trust a faceless corporation, which again makes your sales reps and all those you're doing business with in a B2B environment even more critical to your brand's reputation.
100%. Quick quote from American businessman Zig Ziglar. You might have heard this quote before, but he says that if people like you, they'll listen. If they trust you, they will buy. I myself, as you know, Fern, I'm in the social selling, employee advocacy, professional branding space myself from a technology standpoint. And something I can drop in here, which might segue us nicely into the second portion of this conversation, is that research shows that personal social media profiles, specifically LinkedIn personal employee profiles, achieve a 596% more reach and exposure than that of company branded profiles and that of company branded messaging, with a 7 times higher conversion rate from your personal profiles versus company pages. How do those stats make you feel?
It makes complete sense, doesn't it? I think again it comes back to people trust each other. They want a face. They want somebody to put a face to that organization. You want to know that organization is who they say they are, treat their employees well. And, yes, trust is so critical. and it will make people buy. But the opposite is very true. Like, trust is very easy to lose very, very quickly in the blink of an eye. And that can happen.
Very hard to gain in the first place.
Very hard to gain. Takes a long journey. Easy to lose. Very fast. And, that can happen in the blink of an eye, and it can happen from inside the organization in terms of how people are being treated.
Mm-hmm. So tell me then, just before we move on to the next portion, what's an example of what good looks like in this euphoric sense of, you've got investment into the brand, which is still required, but ultimately, are we all missing a trick in corporate land to be investing in our people's brands, reputation, integrity, training, which all ladders up to building trust, which is the currency that we trade on in B2B. Yeah. What does good look like?
Let me tell you what bad looks like if you don't take a P2P approach and loop back to there. So I've seen this in organizations. So when we don't take that P2P approach and we are very firmly in a B2B world, and we like to think our organization, this is a closed little box, no one can see inside, and no one's going to talk outside about what that organization is doing. Now, I think when we don't remember that P2P, the humanity space, we see the B2B marketing that very sadly actually reigns supreme. And for me, that is the corporate jargon-filled ads that you see, the really boring content you see on LinkedIn that you just scroll past because you do not want to see yet another talking head with two men in suits. Very robotic messaging, kind of those corp bots, mundane, same stuff, research, white papers, just functional messaging, which just sits in a sea of same, no differentiation. And so in that B2B environment, like, how do you choose who to do business with if you all look the same? Right, so it's no wonder that in that situation in B2B, time and cost become a really big factor in who you choose to do business with, because the rest of it is all sea of same. So that's kind of what I think the big risk is if you only sit in a very functional B2B space. What does good look like? I think good looks like thinking about your business as a brand. I think it's about genuine interactions that are extremely honest and transparent, about putting your hand up when you need to put your hand up and admit something. It's about knowing when you're being messaged in a really honest, real way from leadership versus scripted messaging. I think it's about really high levels of engagement. When you're in that environment and you build great relationships in a B2B environment, your audience give back to you. They tell you how they're feeling. And I think having that option and opportunity to talk to the clients and understand what their experience is of your organization, analyze that feedback and value that feedback, it's so important. And you said it, I think the big word is trust. I think when you build that brand perception and you live that brand perception internally and externally, that is huge credibility, right? That is how everyone receives your brand. And if it's consistent, it's believable. And when it's believable and it's credible, it's trusted, and that should translate to extremely loyal clients, who come to you first when there's a problem and don't suddenly take their business elsewhere without having the discussion first. It comes from organic business growth into new services and products, net new growth, because you're winning new business, because your employees are out there talking about how amazing your organization is. And I just think, the value of getting it right is huge. It's huge. The brand perception piece cannot be underplayed.
So I read another stat recently that 83% of B2B decision makers trust a company more when senior management are active on social media. Does this dovetail nicely into the executive personal branding portion of this conversation, would you say? Because there were some things in there that, and I think starting kind of at the top might ultimately ladder down into employee advocacy being a dovetail effect. And so to that stat, then tell me about the importance of executive personal branding, and what do you see executive personal branding first and foremost being?
Yeah. So it's an area I am really passionate about, and one which I spend a lot of my time now coaching CEOs and execs on. And it's been a surprising journey, because what I have seen is so many execs shy away from the light. They don't want to put themselves out there. There's a real fear factor. Oftentimes their comms teams don't want them out there. They're very concerned that they're going to say something or do something to be held up in the future, or they just don't think that their personal brand is important. They feel like they're being really egotistical or very vain in putting themselves out there in LinkedIn or in speaking engagements, on other channels as well. I've seen a lot of execs play across multitude of channels, and there needs to be a shift in that. I think there needs to be a real shift in seeing their personal brand building as an exec as completely linked with the growth of their business and the reputation of their business. And it's really not a simple exercise, and it's important to get it right.
And so executive personal branding then is, give me an example of some of the channels that you speak to around executive personal branding.
Yeah, well, I think first of all it's about building it the right way before you talk about the channels, because I've got a framework that I've developed and that I use, and essentially you've got to think it through, and it has to be very real to you, and it has to be unique to each executive, right? You can't just buy one off the shelf and hope for the best. It's like one of those emotion wheels where you choose which one or which color you are. So what I help execs think through is, how does it align to your own values? What are you fantastic at? What are your strengths? What do you actually love doing? What do you believe in? What are your passions, right? What would people say? Go to that person because they are absolutely incredible at this, and they'll advocate for you if you're not in the room. But as an exec, it has to overlay with the company's values and position and strength. And that's really important. The two need to be in sync. Otherwise, you're probably in the wrong job. You're probably slowly dying inside every day if you haven't got the shared values.
Yeah.
But
or just a really good actor.
Yeah, really good actor who cries every time they turn around the corner. But you've got that human aspect of self. You've got the company or the we, and they have to overlay. But then you've also got the client and the stakeholder aspect in a B2B environment, and you have to understand. Back to that B2C mindset, you've got to understand, the client and stakeholders' needs, motivations. What can you bring them? What can you solve, not sell, if you like? What can you bring them that really matches and overlays your brilliance as well as what your company can deliver and what they need? And that will give you, that intersection of those elements will give you something that is truly unique to you. Now, that can take a very long time to work through those areas, and it's a lot of soul searching. It's hard questions, because we all drink from the Kool-Aid as well on the companies we work for. It's very hard to see, shift the lens and sit on the other side of the table and see things through the client or stakeholder's view versus your own view. And also it's a bit of soul searching to figure out what you're really good at and what you're not good at,
Yeah, a little bit of ikigai on a Saturday afternoon.
It's absolutely right, and it is based on ikigai, and I'm a big fan of ikigai and Japanese philosophy, and it can take, doing ikigai for yourself can take years to get it right. So this is a very condensed way of doing this in a very real way. So that's, I guess, the important part versus channel, because you can't really get to channel unless you start to understand your audience. And that's the next step, right? You've got to figure out, well, who you know who you are, you know what your message is. That's brilliant. You know that it's going to resonate with your audience, but do you know where they are? And do you know how and where to reach them and what type of formats and messaging they would even be receptive to? That's the whole next level of strategy, right? So you can't just craft your brand and then write some key messages and a cheat sheet and that's it, I'm done. You've really got to live it and figure out how to leverage that brilliantly to reach the right people.
And so this all ties really nicely into the P2P side of things, because if you think about, from a B2B, P2P perspective, in B2B, there are, I think Gartner reported currently 10.5 individuals in the decision-making process on the buyer's end. Cost of sale is higher, obviously, than that of socks, for example. Sales cycles are a lot longer. And so P2P, a P2P, person-to-person, people-to-people approach is something that is going to stand you in good stead. You and I both believe this, coupled with branding efforts. But then from an executive standpoint, I really love what you're saying about they must live and breathe the communications that they're about to push out from their personal channels, whatever they might be, based on where the audience is at. So I can see the alignment with the P2P. Are you saying that this executive personal branding is one of the key starting points? And is that the reason why you're so passionate about it? Because it ladders back to your, approach around P2P?
I think look, to me, it should be a mandatory focus for any executive. I think, you join an organization as a leader or an exec or an incoming CEO, and one of the first things they put you through is media training. How on earth can you do that until you know what your personal brand is? And it comes back to a fundamental for company strategy, not just marketing strategy, I think company strategy, and it can become a really strong marketing and business growth asset when it's done correctly. And as you say, it spills over into employee advocacy because they're looking to their leader, and everything you say and everything you do as an executive with an organization is analysed more than we can ever understand or comprehend. It's something I used to tell myself regularly when I was in a leadership position in large organizations is everything you say, everything you do, you're role modeling for everybody else in this organization. And it's just so important to know who you are and what you stand for and align that with the company first.
And that takes us really nicely into employee advocacy, because a lot of employees kind of go, well, why would I want to do it? Yeah. Why? For salespeople, they're probably more attuned to understanding why, less so. I mean, marketing, you'd probably argue that they would understand it, but not understand why they would necessarily need to be so involved. But I can make many arguments for that. HR as well. Another argument can be made as to, talent searching and keeping candidates up to speed on what it's like to work at said organization via their personal brand. But so tell me how then employee advocacy fits in, and essentially how is that different? Bearing in mind, I know, but for the audience, how does employee advocacy differ from executive personal branding?
Yeah, okay, cool. So first of all, let's touch on the differentiation, and I want to loop back and hope I remember what I wanted to say. So obviously, if you're an exec, you are the face of an organization to other executives, but also to all of your teammates and staff. So that's really important. You're in a leadership position. You have certain accountabilities on you to represent your organization in a very fair way and uphold the values of your organization. Now, when you think about employee advocacy, this can be done very badly and can risk company reputation. So I'm certainly not an advocate for incentivized employee advocacy programs or pressure being placed on employees to be advocates of an organization. I think it has to be their choice. I think the way that you treat employees will naturally create a group of people who will say things about your organization. And what you would like them to say is that it's a fantastic place to work, that they look after their staff, they've never worked anywhere so brilliant, that the company absolutely behaves the way that they say they do, they believe in the things that they say they believe in. But that has to be real, okay? So I really don't think it can be something that is incentivized. So you mentioned HR, and I do think it's very important to have HR and talent or engagement teams as well. There are so many different teams now work hand in hand with your marketing and communications teams, okay? Especially in a B2B environment, but in any organization, quite frankly, because, I mean, we mentioned it earlier, but your employees are your brand representatives. No matter which organization you work within, even if you're selling B2C products and you've got cereal on a shelf, those employees are still going to talk to their mates at a barbecue. They're going to write stuff on social. They're going to go on Glassdoor. It is really important in terms of a relationship. And so that relationship so often sits outside of a marketer's remit. We forget that the P's, the 4 P's, people is one of them. And that's for a really good reason. It's a hugely important aspect of business loyalty and growth and brand perception, right? So if you, and stop me if I'm going too far, Vinnie, into this, but I get really passionate about it. If you think about an employee value proposition and HR policies and how staff are KPI'd, or how their performance is measured, that's all about the employee experience, yeah? But that all drives external messaging because they will talk outside of your organization. And so the way that your employees have that experience of your organization has to match the external positioning, the way that your organization and brand experience is expressed externally. from the organization. So your positioning, your client value proposition, the organizational purpose, the core values, everything has to be in sync both internally and externally. Because when they're not, we talked about it earlier, trust is going to evaporate because the truth will out. Truth will out. And we spend so much time as marketers thinking about how we show up externally in campaigns and how we're going to win the next award, maybe put an amazing statue up to make a big statement. But how we treat suppliers and staff and stakeholders, that is how people experience your brand too. So I think that's really important, and that builds trust hugely and has to be consistent and clear from the beginning.
So something really, really interesting there, and I just want to pull on that thread a little bit, is employee advocacy is a brand building exercise as to the culture of the organization from within which these people work. Or at least it can be. It doesn't have to be. So in some instances, some people brand employee advocacy as a program that doesn't force people to go onto said program, but a program that finds and nominates certain individuals within the organization to join said program for them to advocate if they show signs of already enjoying and advocating for the brand within which they work, right? So not forcing you, but you feel like that you are someone that says good things about us already. We'd like to reward that by having you on the program, leveraging the nice things that you're saying, but more in an official basis. What does that end up doing? That ends up increasing word of mouth, positive word of mouth. It then ends up increasing the reputation, the brand, right? And what does that lead to? Well, that ultimately leads to money in the bank, doesn't it? Right? If you hear that this company is doing nice things and that they're treating their people well, you will then consider them because your share of consideration as an organization goes up, which leads you to closer closing ROI, right? Let's not beat around the bush. I suppose my question is, and I'm trying to get to a point, but my head is filling with questions. When looking, so I want to get back to your point around within the HR space and setting certain KPIs within employment contracts, no matter the department that they're in. What are you saying there? Are you saying that there should be more consideration as to what those KPIs are in order to try and organically bring out a more brand affinity, brand positivity? Is that what you're saying?
So I think not necessarily. No, I actually think, KPIs, if you're working with HR and brought your marketing communications expertise and years of understanding people that you're trying to reach and target, and think about employees as within that target audience, if you like, because they are so critical as a channel, your KPIs and how employees are KPI'd, of course you're going to have very important commercial KPIs. They can't disappear. But perhaps there are KPIs that are more around the organization's values. And I think that's really important. I think demonstrating personal, professional benefits and career growth by living and breathing the company's values, understanding them, is really important. And so whilst there might be programs where those people who are already championing their organization and they've picked up their pom-poms and they're the cheerleaders for the organization are then asked to publicly advocate for an organization, that's great. I think every single person working for an organization should feel great about where they work because they should understand more about that organization and what it stands for and how they do business and how they treat people at every element of where and how they do business. Wouldn't it be brilliant if we all felt like that every day?
Yeah, it would, but not to sort of take the dark path here, but there is on one hand, and I feel like that in that last portion, I sort of took it down a bit of a darker path, more of a hard-nosed approach, I would say, but that's okay, that's fine. But on one hand, yes, an organization can advocate, it can put markers in place to ensure that everyone is enjoying and everyone is, trying to. Everyone is aware of what those values are and encouraging everyone within the organization to get behind it But let's be real, not everyone comes to work with an attitude of positivity every day. Not everyone comes to work on one day believing those values are truthful and that they themselves believe in that business. And that's not to say that they shouldn't work there. It's just to say that it's very hard to imagine a world where 100% of your workforce are going to get behind whether they're rebranded or they've been the brand values from day dot 100 years ago. Maybe someone has walked into your organization that has got no interest in any of that, and they just want to get a paycheck and see you later, thanks very much, goodbye. Is that a chink in the armor?
I don't think so. It's a harsh truth. We're not robots, we're people. And I think as long as an organization, you can put the work in and ensure that the way you treat your people and your employee value proposition, your employee experience is on point with how you express yourself externally, then you're doing the right thing. And I think that's a really important lesson to live by in any organization, B2B or B2C. Do the right thing even if no one's looking at every element, every facet of the business. You don't need every single person that works with you or for you saying you're fantastic. You just don't want them being negative about you, right? Because they see that there's things that are being done that aren't ethical, for example. And I think we talked about losing trust really quickly. An employee who speaks negatively about how they're treated or how an organization does business or how it treats suppliers or cuts corners to make its product, you can see that that's going to damage the company reputation. So as long as you're aligning your employee experience with your external experience and proposition and brand, that's really important.
Okay, so we could spend so many hours on that topic, and I think I'm going to give you a call next week just to pick your brains even further and tell you more about my thoughts. But let's just move to the final piece, which is we're running out of time. So I'm really going to kind of just bring this to one question. So based on everything that we've said, has there been, or everything that we've just spoken about, has there been a place that you have operated within that you felt as though ticked more of these boxes, if not all, versus others? And if so, what are some of the key call outs what are some of the key results that you can, practically share? With these things in place? What are marketers that are listening ultimately going to look forward to if they do nothing else but listen and apply absolutely everything that you've said? What are they looking forward to?
Yeah. Well, let's look at P2P and I guess bringing that more emotive marketing and human side into the mix. If you think about P2P and bringing that into a B2B environment. So we already know that B2C brands, they absolutely excel at creating emotional connection with their audience. So I believe that if you're in a B2B marketing space and you take a P2P approach and focus on human elements, that is the best possible grounding you can have. So, I have worked on spaces like this for Deloitte, actually, in sharing stories of such incredible, life-changing, extraordinary work that they do for their clients, and telling those with their clients and doing it in a very real way. It would have been very easy to lapse into the B2B corporatees and talk about the technology and do, quick pieces about how incredible the technology they created was and how, they're the hero of the day and came in and saved. But the reality is, it is about the story first, who it impacts and the change it makes. The technology is second. And so anyone wanting to look at that, you could look at the New South Wales Rural Fire Service video, or there's a beautiful piece about Compass Group and Mill Vision, which is an incredible AI solution in essentially combating malnutrition in aged care facilities. So I think that's one space. I would also call out PayPal, a significant player in the B2B marketing space. I was extremely fortunate to work as a global lead, a strategy for marketing communications for them. And, what I see for them is their support for business is immense and it is real. And the focus is being customer oriented. That marketing team really and truly want to understand the audience and what's happening in their world, and then how PayPal and the products can fit in. They don't come at it from a product first perspective. Strategy was always the foundation. And I think that's something that has led to them being globally recognized as a trusted brand. Their business resource center is a huge resource for SMBs and takes a huge amount of work and investment. And programs that I run, like the Adaptables, which was all around giving inspiration and stories and very real and raw stories from other founders and organizations doing it tough and being able to inspire others around the world. So I think you can see people doing it brilliantly. Now, from that executive personal brand building, if you're in a B2B marketing space and your execs, CEO do not have a strong personal brand, what I wouldn't do is suddenly just start asking them to post on LinkedIn. I certainly wouldn't be using AI to craft their posts for them, and I wouldn't be asking an agency or a grad to write their posts for them. I think we all know when we're being messaged. We all know when it's not real. I would say you have to go back to the core of building a very genuine personal brand, and the only person that can do that is the execs themselves. You can't do it for them, right? You can coach them through it. You cannot do it for them. And that will build trust. It will help differentiate them and the organization in the market. It will build company reputation. More importantly, it will actually build a workforce who trust in their leaders and feel a sense of pride in where they work as well. So I think that's really important. Again, trust barometer, but we know that people expect CEOs to lead with integrity. They're falling down when it comes to trust from the general public. So they have to work that much harder to bring out their true selves and their real selves. Shane Elliott, I think, is absolutely incredible and real. And I have to call out Salesforce. I think it wouldn't be news to anyone. I know you've had my good friend Leandro on here in the past. Salesforce is a force in B2B marketing. And I was very fortunate to have Pip Marlowe as one of my mentors and giving me brilliant advice. Again, just like PayPal, they put such an emphasis on their customer and understanding their customer and meeting their customer needs. Very B2C mindset, becoming customer obsessed and bringing them into the metaphorical room, I guess, is what it's all about. And, they produce brilliant content. They personalize. What I love about them is they even use characters. We're used to seeing characters in the B2B space. We're used to the meerkats and the Tony Tigers and the rest of it. Salesforce have used characters in such a brilliant, genius way in B2B marketing. So I think, that's my big thing is you bring B2C in, really bring that brand building and all the aspects that come with brand building into a B2B approach.
Do you want a chance to win personalised advice about your ABM strategy? Well, Xgrowth and Media Collateral are back again with the State of Account-Based Marketing Report for 2024. If you're in the APAC region, we'd love to hear your thoughts on ABM. And in return, we'll give you our ABM Essentials Pack for immediate download. Plus, we'll send you an exclusive hard copy and a digital pre-release copy of the report. Be a part of this awesome industry study and win not only a chance to chat with our Xgrowth team about your strategy, but also the opportunity to ask your questions in real time during our expert Q&A session when the report goes live. So what are you waiting for? Fill in the 3-minute survey today with the link in the pod description, and together we'll find out the state of account-based marketing in APAC for 2024.
Fern, thank you. This has been an incredible session with you. So from a rapid fire question perspective, so just 4 questions that I'm going to rattle off, single word or single sentence answers, just see what rolls off the tongue. What is one resource that fundamentally changed the way you work or live? That could be a book, a blog, a podcast, a talk, etc. What is one resource that fundamentally changed the way you work or live?
The Marketing Academy. Nothing else like it.
Who heads up the Marketing Academy?
Sherilyn Jackal.
Be hitting those people up for sure. Next question. If you could only give one piece of advice to B2B marketers or salespeople, what would it be? I think I know the answer, but what would it be?
Be customer obsessed. Be the SME in your clients. Bring them into the room. Shape your strategies around them and see everything from their view. You will be a much stronger marketer if you see things from their view rather than from your company's view.
Who are the influencers that you follow in the marketing or sales space today?
Mark Pritchard. I was very fortunate to work with Procter & Gamble during his time. Sil Salah. Again, very lucky to work with Diageo during her time. She also now, you should get her on here. She runs an amazing marketing leadership program. Mark Ritson, of course. And I would say the B2B Institute is really important. You probably had it mentioned here before, but the B2B Institute of LinkedIn, absolutely fantastic insight.
John Lombardo, who I believe has left recently. So last question, what's something that excites you about B2B today?
It's a bit of a gloomy one. It's sustainability. I think, the ESG factors now that are being incorporated into investment decisions, pose mandatory reporting around climate and ESG factors, governments introducing new regulations that are going to require companies to disclose ESG performance, fines coming in. This excites me because it forces organisations to strive for actions, not just words. They can't just say they're doing something. The truth will out. And I think as a marketer, it is our critical responsibility to wake up the boards and the leaders to see that and to mitigate risk and stop any greenwashing and ridiculous claims being made that aren't true.
Fern, thank you so much. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with you. I've gotten to know you better as a person. I've gotten to unlock areas of my mind in this conversation just by having a bit of a joust with you on thoughts and the way that we approach things in B2B. I am very much looking forward to this episode going live and looking forward to seeing all the positive things that people have to say from what they've learned from your incredible mind. Fern, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Vinnie. I loved it. Really good chat. Thank you.
No problem. Everyone that's listening, thanks so much, and we'll see you again. Bye.
This episode was hosted by Vinnie Romano. It was produced and edited by Alexander Hipwell and Liza Maywald. Special thanks to Tina Wabe. We couldn't make this show without you. If you enjoyed the show, give us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcast, or share with a friend. We'll catch you in the next one.